In 4 days, two sprinters who have never raced each other are going to line up on the same track in a small city in the Czech Republic, and one of them is the reigning Olympic 100-meter champion. The other one is 18 years old. His name is Gout Gout, and 6 weeks ago he became the first Australian in history to run a 200-meter under 20 seconds. People are calling him the next Usain Bolt. Usain Bolt himself agrees with that comparison. On June 16th at the Ostrava Golden Spike, Noah Lyles and Gout Gout will race each other for the first time ever. Not over 100 meters, not over 200, over 150 meters, a distance so rare that almost nobody outside the sport has ever heard of it. And the man whose record they're both chasing isn't even competing. This is the story of how a teenager from Queensland ended up on a start line next to one of the most dominant sprinters of his generation, why Lyles himself helped put him there, and what's actually at stake when the gun goes off. Noah Lyles walked into 2026 with a strange kind of freedom. For the first time since the pandemic, there is no Olympic Games and no World Championships on the calendar. No pressure meet, no must-win final. Just a season of racing for the sake of it. He opened that season in Tokyo at the same national stadium where he'd won a world title the previous September and ran 9.95 in his first 100-meter of the year. He wasn't even sharp out of the blocks. His reaction time was the slowest in the field. He still won. That's the thing about Lyles. He's an 8-time world champion. He's the Paris 2024 Olympic 100-meter gold medalist. He has spent years being the man everyone else is trying to catch. But this year, something changed. Instead of just looking ahead at the competition, Lyles started looking at what was coming up behind him. And what was coming up behind him was a teenager from the other side of the world who runs like he's been doing this for 20 years. The kid who broke the 20-second barrier Gout Gout first showed up on people's radar as a 16-year-old, when he broke Australia's under-18 200-meter record. That alone would have been enough to get attention. But it didn't stop there. By 2024, he was being called the world's fastest teenager. He medaled at the World Under-20 Championships. He set a national 200-meter record. And then, earlier this year, he did something no Australian sprinter had ever done in the entire history of the sport. He ran 19.67 seconds for 200 meters. Under 20 seconds. As an 18-year-old. That time didn't just make him the fastest junior in the world right now, it put him on a list of times that most full-grown professional sprinters never get close to in their entire careers. People started drawing comparisons immediately. Not to a good sprinter, not to a promising sprinter, to Usain Bolt, the 8-time Olympic gold medalist, the man who redefined what was humanly possible on a track, looked at Gout Gout's numbers at that age and said he saw the similarities himself. That's not a journalist's exaggeration. That's Bolt's own assessment. So now there's an 18-year-old running times that draw Bolt comparisons, and an Olympic champion who just decided this was the year to take it easy. When the champion becomes the mentor earlier this year, something happened that surprised a lot of people. Noah Lyles and Gout Gout started training together, not racing against each other, training together in the United States. Lyles talked about it afterward, and what he said wasn't the usual guarded competitive language you'd expect from a champion sizing up a future threat. He called Gout a really good kid. He talked about his youthful energy and his hunger. Think about what that actually means. Lyles is the guy at the absolute top of the sport. He has no obligation to help anyone get faster, especially not someone who, on paper, represents the next generation that's eventually going to try to take his title away. But Lyles didn't see it that way. He saw a kid with talent and decided to put his hand on the wheel. And then, just weeks before their race in Ostrava, footage leaked of the two of them doing block starts together, side by side. In the lead-up to their first ever competitive meeting, that footage went viral. Not because it showed anything dramatic, just two sprinters practicing starts. But the symbolism was impossible to ignore. The student and the mentor about to become competitors, training in the same lane. The distance nobody runs here is where it gets interesting. When World Athletics announced this race, they didn't put Lyles and Gout in a 100 or a 200. They put them in a 150. The 150-meter is one of the strangest distances in sprinting. It's not an Olympic event. It's not a World Championship event. It barely exists outside of a handful of exhibition races, most famously the ones Usain Bolt used to run in Manchester years ago. So why a 150? Because there's a number that both of these athletes are circling, and it belongs to someone who isn't even racing. Kashani Thompson, the Jamaican sprinter, who finished second to Lyles in the Paris Olympic 100-meter final, ran 14.92 seconds for 150 meters at the Miramar Invitational in Florida. That time stands as the world best for the distance. Lyles has never raced in Ostrava before. This will be his debut at the meet, and by choosing the 150, he's not just racing Gout Gout. He's chasing a number that the man who finished behind him at the Olympics just set. Gout, meanwhile, isn't walking into unfamiliar territory. He's been to Ostrava before. Last year, at this exact meet, he won the 200 meters in 20.02 seconds, becoming the first Australian to break the 20-second barrier on that track. He's going back to the scene of his own personal best. So you've got an Olympic champion chasing a rival's record on a track he's never run on, against a teenager defending the site of his own breakthrough. On a distance neither of them races very often, in a race that didn't exist as a competitive event until someone decided these two needed to be on the same start line. What June 16th actually means, strip away the hype for a second. And here's what's actually true. This is the first time these two have ever raced each other. Not trained together. Raced Lyles is 28. He's at the peak of his powers, in a year with no major championship pressure, free to chase whatever records he wants. Gout is 18, already running times that put him in conversation with the greatest sprinter who ever lived, and now stepping onto a track against the man who currently holds Olympic gold in the event Gout, is presumably going to be chasing for the next decade. If Gout wins, or even runs close, the story isn't just teenager beats champion. It's the kid Noah Lyles personally trained just beat him. And if Lyles wins by running down Kashani Thompson's world best in the process, the story becomes about an 8-time world champion, proving that even in a year with nothing on the line, he's still hunting records other people set. Either way, on June 16th, at the Ostrava Golden Spike, something gets settled. Not a rivalry, not yet, but a marker, a line in the sand for what the next era of sprinting is going to look like. 4 days from now, two sprinters who've spent months training side by side are going to stand on opposite sides of the same start line, and only one of them is going to cross it first. If you want to know what happens when it does, that's exactly what we're covering next. Subscribe so you don't miss it.